Right, I'm Nirmal Rana. So I have a very small kind of creative studio that specializes in a multidisciplinary approach kind of project. So projects that I look into will range from architecture, interior design, product design, and graphic communication. And the reason being why I actually established this kind of multidisciplinary approach is because of the kind of education that I had and from the place that I was brought up and the kind of mindset and exposure that I got, and that kind of motivated me to actually bring out this design studio. So looking into that, I felt that there is actually quite a one of them niche scope in Nepal, whereby if you can be very specialized in the area that you look into, although it's multidisciplinary, but you are very selective of the kind of project that you take, then the joy in actually bringing the value and interacting with the client to create a relationship whereby they understand the value of design, that kind of engagement. So that was the fun part. So yeah, so I have Nirmal Rana Creative Studio, that is my company's name. I was brought up in Singapore, stayed there for more than 20 years. From there I moved over to Beijing, China. I stayed there for 5.5 years, and right now after leaving Beijing, I'm in Nepal. So I've been here for 7.5 years.
So you have been practicing architectural interiors for 7.5 years in Nepal?
Yeah, so I've been practicing that. So in Singapore, I studied a diploma in architecture. That was a 3 years course. I believe that in that particular kind of program, it's already quite rigorous because you get to challenge yourself with a lot of critical kind of thinking. You get projects that really questions the need as to why it needs to be done. That kind of challenges really brings out a lot of things that you don't know, and you always have the keenness to actually find out that there are areas that you really want to kind of find out. So in regards to that, I realized that I needed a different branch of education. So I branched out to study product design. That's the bachelor's in art in product design, because I felt that once you have understood one scope of the area, I think it's also good to understand the other branches of design, because when you truly understand that there are different components that comes together to make one a functional body that has a certain aesthetic, then it is a lot more engaging and exciting. So I did the product design, and when I went over to Beijing, China, that's where I actually taught interior design and also product design. So after leaving Beijing, China, like you mentioned, 7.5 years, I've been practicing a project that relates to architecture, interior design, furniture design, and graphic communication. So holistically, that comes under the scope of what I actually do through my company. Okay, I realized that working in Nepal for 7.5 years, it was really challenging in the sense that the way that I was brought up in Singapore and the places that I worked, for example, in Beijing, China, they have a different approach to the lifestyle that you live, the way you kind of look into things, the people you meet. So that kind of exposure gives you the ability to actually look into areas that you really want to say, okay, this is the things that I want to do. So when I came back to Nepal, I realized that it was really difficult for me to kind of find my ground, because for 3 to 4 years I did have a difficult struggle just to get a base, starting off to trying to get a project. So once I had a base, I realized that I started to move on quite fast. Right, so within a matter of 7 years, I did manage to get quite an interesting project that I could actually work on. And I realized something, that it kind of created a kind of burnout, meaning that you didn't really get the kind of space for yourself to focus as to what exactly you need to do and exactly who you are. So this lockdown period did give me the opportunity to again have that space to create that kind of reflection. So So it was actually a good break point. So I think during the lockdown, I kind of really just calmed down, reflected on things that I need to look into for the near coming future, and also literally just zone out here.
So you became more wiser after the lockdown then?
Not really wiser, but I think it did bring in some sense of calmness. So the point of reflection of what you actually been doing for the past 7 years, was it worth it? Was it the kind of things that you really wanted to go through? And I realized that the challenges that I did gain through that period was something that was very valuable, because every process makes you really understand that the next level, it will kind of give you the strength to move on and approach something bigger. So yeah, the reflection, the time by myself, and just thinking about what I actually want to do for the next stage of my career, that was the space that I felt was comfortable during the COVID period. So yeah. Okay, so if I were to look into horoscope, so normally I do really look into that, but I kind of attune myself looking into Chinese horoscope. So the year that I was born, I'm not going to mention it, but it falls under the rooster. So I think roosters are meant to be somehow quite inquisitive, curious, or something like that. So I think I kind of relate to the idea of a rooster. Okay, the way I approach design, I have a very Zen way of thinking, meaning to say that I am not someone who is fascinated with a lot of things that is coming at you at once, but I prefer something that has its own place, its own character, and you can really define exactly what that is rather than everything coming you at once. So the approach that I take into my project is basically a very thoughtful process of looking into one after the next. So I approach in a way where it's actually an additive process. So mostly when people do, it's actually a subtractive process, meaning to say that they will put everything into a project. Then if they don't like it, they will actually take it out. For me, it's actually, I start off with a base which is actually a very minimal intervention. Then if you feel that there needs to be certain kind of personalization, then that's where you add it. So I've been always fascinated with the idea of Zen philosophy, whereby been inspired by Japanese designers, the way they look into the raw beauty of the basic material and bring it into something that is beyond what it is, but still retaining that very essential character. So yeah, the philosophy, the approach that I take is actually something that's very minimal and simple. And when I approach a project, there's always a process, and the process is, I think, is very important, because I think in order to actually start from the beginning and to reach the end, you need to be able to define the program at every stage of the process. Because if you are not very clear as to the intention as to what will turn out at the end, then the process is the one that will actually create the kind of guide, the pathway that leads to the end. So for me, it's basically, when a client comes to me, it's basically doing a lot of research about the client, understanding what the client needs, what kind of value the client is looking for in that particular project. And if I believe that I can give the client a certain kind of value, then that's where we'll really sit down and understand, so what is the scope of the project, what kind of style that the client is looking into. And I think when you want to talk about style, we can actually talk about it later, because the idea of style, to truly understand what style it is, actually a big kind of topic by itself. Design for me basically is problem solving, first thing foremost, because normally when you, I think, do a little bit of research in the dictionary and also online, when you type design, I think the first thing that comes will be to plan, right? So to me, design basically is to plan and is to solve problem. It's not just to say that you want to solve something, but you need to solve it, but at the same time, the aesthetic part also has to come in. So it's actually a fine balance between aesthetics and functionality. So design, again, I say, is basically solving problems. Well, I don't really know, but my mom did mention to me way back that, I moved over to Singapore when I was 8 years old. So before I moved, I actually was staying in my parents' village. So she used to tell me that I had the fascination of actually building houses using rocks and mud. So I think it started from there, because once I studied, I was actually very clear as to what I actually wanted to achieve, meaning to say that design was something that I actually wanted to study and finish off by becoming a designer. So that's I think how it started. Okay, national designers, like I said, I've not been in Nepal for a very long time, so I'm not really well versed, right? But foreign, definitely there are a few designers that I look into. For example, Frank Gehry. The reason I like his work is because he's someone who actually kind of merges art with design. So if you look into his project, it's something that has a certain sense of aesthetics that blends the functional aspect of it, and yet it integrates the design part of it, the sculptural part of the form. And also people, it's actually either you like it or you do not like it. So for me, Frank Gehry is one. On the same line, when I did one of my projects in Singapore, I also did a lot of research on Morphosis, because they have the same kind of tendency towards the kind of design they approach. So it's actually fusing art and design together to actually create a functional space. Yeah, so Frank Gehry. Well, not really, because when I approach design, I think I have to be very clear about the intention as to why things shape out to be the way it is. So if I enter someone's place, I would definitely have an inclination as to things are working or not working, but I think I can't just base and justify it on my personal note to say that this is how it should be. It should never be that way, because until and unless you can understand the intention of why that friend has actually morphed that place to be what it is, then I think I can talk about it. So it's not just going over to say that do this, do that, change this, and it's not looking good, because I think that's not the right way to do it. So not really. Well, like say just now, you did ask me a question about what design is solving problem. So to a 5 years old, like I have a son who really loves playing with Lego. So for him, if I were to explain the idea of what design is, I'll actually ask him to build something. And when he builds something, I think with his own sense of creativity and openness, you will actually create a structure, and you can see that there's something that's morphing out of it. And once you start to give it a form and you start calling that this is a dinosaur or this is a bus, I think if you have really understood that design is what it is from that point of interaction between the child and myself. Yeah.
So since you have specialization in product design, interior design, and architecture as well, which one do you prefer the most while designing?
Frankly, I'm very much into architecture, because I was always inspired by form. And when I studied architecture in Singapore, the first thing that I truly learned about was painting with light. So that's where you actually bring the inside to outside and bring the outside to the inside. So it's actually a flow of space from inner to the outer and from outer to the inner. So actually the spatial play of the void, the axis, the way you move around, and the overall form that kind of inspires you. I think so. Architecture definitely is something that I like compared to the tree. But then again, once you start designing and you take the holistic approach, everything will start to fit in. So I think collectively it works as one. Well, not really. Don't really have a dream project. I think every project that comes on hand is project that has its own kind of strength and promise. So if you approach every project with the intention that you can actually give it a certain kind of value, engagement, sensitivity, definitely every project will be a dream project. And that's actually how I view it, rather than just saying that this is what I want to do or that's what I want to do. Definitely minimalism, modern, rawness, these three things. Advice would be definitely, I think they need a lot more exposure. They need the right mentors. They need to read and read and read and read. And they really need to question critically in every aspect of thought, meaning to say that, why am I doing this? The reason I'm doing is because of this. What am I trying to solve? What kind of value that I'm actually trying to bring into the picture? And what can I take away from this? And am I giving this kind of value that needs to be given to the client? So if you complete a certain kind of project, do you think that the after-thought process of them getting that kind of value that you're given to the client, will it justify your undertaking of that? So if you can just question all of these things, definitely you'll be someone with a lot more open sensibility and with that kind of openness and with the keen intention of just trying to learn and learn and learn. And that's one advice that I would ask them. Yeah, I would give it to them. Yeah.
So they need to critically analyze the stuff.
Definitely, I think when you talk about design, it's literally trying to solve a problem. You can't just go there and say that I want to make it, so beautiful. Then you become an artist. So there's a differentiation between an artist and a designer. But then, of course, like I say, if you want to be in between, then there are designers like Frank Gehry who actually fuses the kind of art design and form to create a very functional space. And I think it is more about what you want to become in the intent of what you want to achieve and what you want to bring out. And if you are very clear about the kind of idea behind this is what I want to do, then I think the clarity will just come from there. You just need to be very much focused in the direction that you want to go towards too.
What do you think is the correct process of critically analyzing? I think that's actually we leave it to the students to say that you have to critically analyze, but they don't actually know what it actually means, I think.
Okay, for that, it's quite simple. So, for example, I'll give you a simple example. Say you need to go to a wedding ceremony. So before you need to go to the wedding ceremony, you do a little bit of research to understand exactly who is going to wed who, and what kind of people are going to come there, what is the kind of setting that it's going to be. So with that process, you already are thinking about, okay, I'm being invited to the wedding and I need to be there and I need to wear something. And the critical part is already on the process of really looking into, okay, how do you want to present yourself while going to the wedding? You can dress heavily or you can dress well casually or semi-formal, but I think already there's actually a brief given to you to say that, okay, for this particular setting, this is what needs to be done. Based on what this needs to be done, you need to think about this and you need to think about the kind of look and feel that you want to project yourself. So knowing that, okay, this is actually a very formal event, then you start to think about, okay, what should I wear? So this goes with this or does this goes with that. And if you know that exactly the sensibility of color is very important, you start to think about, okay, what matters and what does not matter. So that is how you start to critically think about, okay, how all these pieces come together. Because at the end of the day, you want to be someone who is very presentable to the wedding. So if you don't think critically, you not go into that level of performance. But if you critically think about exactly how you want to be perceived at that particular event, how you want to present yourself, then the critical thinking part has already started from the point one. So so that kind of input has to be looked into. Arko chai, I'll give you, when it comes to design, so I teach my students. So I say to them, it's all about how much to add and how much not to add. Because I think when you design, you definitely want to create something that's beautiful, right? But then how do you know when it's enough and when it's not enough. So I give them this example that I always talk about. So say for example, there's this person, the person has 1 mole. That's beautiful, right? Because that's a God-given mole and it's strategically over there. The person looks beautiful. And if you feel that, no, I want to, kind of make a little bit shift in the look, I'm going to put another mole. That's fine. You're adding second element, but you need to know where exactly you're adding. Second is good. But if you start to add 3, 4, 5, then you're actually destroying the face. So what I tell them is either you have 1 mole or you have freckles, because freckles in itself is beautiful, right? And 1 mole in itself is beautiful. You add another mole, it's kind of complement a mole. But if you add 3 or 4 mole randomly without really giving it a thought, then you're just destroying. So if you apply that kind of analogy to design, it's the same thing. So how much to add, how much not to add will give you the idea what shape it will take. Yeah. So that's second analogy.
Like that it actually teach a lot of youngsters like what they don't even study in 5 years, I think.
No, I mean, like I say, when you go to school, it's not just hoping with the intention of actually getting all the answers. Because what I've actually experienced myself, so for example, when I was studying in Singapore, I come from Nepal and I went over to Singapore. So my lecturer used to tell me for my first year design studio class, he was saying that, look, I think the way you have approached your design has a very strong kind of connection to where you come from. So that hit me hard. He's trying to say you need to open up, okay? Because I was not opening up, because I have that kind of mentality of, you've not been exposed too much to what is possible, and I'm just kind of confined to what I have known. And based on where I come from, I try to just put that kind of feel into it, and that was not enough. So he opened up with the idea that, okay, look at this. He introduced me to chaos theory, and that's where things started to just morph. So he gave me a piece of paper, so he asked me to crumple it, and he asked me to pass that piece of paper to everyone. So what's happening is because the interaction between you and the paper, and you and the other person interacting with the paper, the forms kind of morphs into something dynamic. So that was how they actually taught us. So meaning to say that you can't just look into things literally, you need to kind of really understand the idea that there's more to what you see. So the idea of exposing yourself to new ways of thinking, trying to read a lot. So that kind of really shaped me in the way that how I view projects right now. Because even in Nepal, when I come with something that has a different take to what is been perceived, then they will definitely say, oh, it's not possible. But then I think if you can take them step by step to try to articulate exactly how it's going to be done, how it's going to form, at the end of the day it's achievable. But when it becomes into fruition, then they start to realize that, oh, yeah, that's possible. And I think that sets a new kind of mentality that, okay, if this can be done, then the next scope of the project definitely can be also achieved. Oh, I was thinking of becoming, actually I love photography, so I'm a self-taught photographer also. So I was thinking either a photographer or a culinary chef, because of the presentation, the fineness of, is basically everything that deals with aesthetics, design. So even though if I were to just get away from design, the part of design will always connect me to something that has design-related input. So for me, I think I bring myself as a designer rather than a specific title to it. The reason being is you have to understand that even architectural designers like Frank Gehry, Zaha, they don't really just touch projects based on architecture. They actually design furniture, jewelries, and so forth, right? So right now, what we need to understand is basically the coexistence of different fields coming together to actually create projects rather than just specializing in a certain specific. Specialization in itself is definitely good, but then I think if you really want to innovate and try to experiment and explore, the opportunity is so vast in a sense that a designer can do a lot of things if he truly understands the intention behind the particular idea as to what you want to create. Because there are definitely interior designers doing architectural projects, there are product designers doing interior design projects, and so forth. So it's actually a multidisciplinary approach that's been into the picture. So yeah, so I call myself as a designer. So just now I did mention that I would really like to talk about style. So I think not many designers really truly understand what style is. Style is actually a progression of a different period whereby there's actually intellectuals thinking about this particular period, where, okay, this is something that we want to do based on this particular ideology and this particular thought, and want to actually break away from an existing norm of doing things, right? So when you look into how all these different styles evolve, you then try to understand that there's different kind of intellectual thinkers out there defining what should be done. So when you ask me that question for the future, I don't really know, because at the end of the day, there will be individuals, a group of thinkers coming up with ideology, thinking as to, okay, this should be the direction in design. And if it's successful and if it makes sense, if it solves a certain kind of ideology that really looks into resolving problems and economic cities and so forth, and that will be the direction that it's going to take. In terms of design per se, most of the time when you deal with clients is that one personal taste, so you can't actually impose that on them. But if the client is very much open to the idea that I need something that's well designed, then of course you can convince them that, okay, this is the direction that we can move to, because this is going to give you the kind of aesthetics, the functional need, the kind of look and feel. Then and that's what you're going to get. But how and what direction design is going to take in the near future, it really depends on the situation and context.
I just want to say that the molds that you said on the face can be minimalism, and then freckles can be neoclassicism.
Well, like I say, I'm not an expert in different styles because I have a certain preference of style. So for example, the reason I approach project that deals with minimalism, modernism, is because I love the kind of sensitivity, the sensibility, the refinedness, the lack of ornamentation, that's the rawness. The reason is because I think when you're born, we are born naked, right? So the embellishment part only comes later. But the beauty of how you're born, I think there's always that kind of, the mystery, the kind of interest in itself. So that's why I look into the idea of rawness as that kind of way of looking into how we come out into the world. So if I can give beauty to the rawness, that in itself is beautiful. So when you say that freckles represent that and mold represent that, I don't think we can define in that sense. But like I say, different style has its own uniqueness to it. Like the movement Bauhaus is different, Art Deco is different, right? Modernism, Neo-modernism, Classicism, Neoclassicism, all of these Rococo, all these different periods have its own intention. They have their own need, there's own thought behind it. So it's very difficult to just articulate exactly a particular style. I don't have any favorite material. As long as there's rawness in a project, then I think that's the material that I use, because I don't believe in kind of beautifying things with giving additional layer that kind of hides the intricacies and the beauties that underlies within that particular material, right? So if any material has that certain kind of beauty, then I'm actually a big fan of that kind of rawness. I'm very much fascinated with the temples. That means like Patan Durbar Square, Bhaktapur. So all these things that relates to vernacular architecture, and that has this kind of beauty, which I can say the rawness, because you don't see temples being embellished with paints and all that. What you see is what you get. So that kind of natural beauty, because I think the fascination with this rawness is also from where I actually come from. Like I say, I was actually born in the village, so whatever you see around you kind of inspires you. I think it gravitates towards how you kind of evolve in that kind of surrounding. With that kind of mentality and the appreciation, I think that is the continuation of what I do right now. So it has never changed, because I realized the projects that I did for my design way back in Singapore, I was looking back to it, I saw a lot of rawness. Okay? So all the design that I did was just raw. So I think I'm always fascinated with that, the beauty that you find in the raw materials that shapes out eventually a design, a function, a form. Definitely, if you don't welcome clients into your design, then that is not a project that needs collaboration. That's more like you trying to say, I'm egoistically a very good designer and you should do what I want to do. That's not how design works. It's more about understanding the requirement of the client, meaning to say the client will always come to you saying that, okay, this is what I want. They will even define a certain kind of style to say that, okay, this is the style I'm looking for. So with understanding the kind of requirement, the program, right, and the style that the client wants, then your role is to make that and leverage it further, to tell the client that, okay, the proposition you have actually put forward to me is very interesting and I can see there's a big scope in it, let's bring it forward. So I think there needs to be a dance between the client and the designer, because it's a tango kind of thing. Definitely there are certain things that you will not be happy with what the client has projected, but I think it's a matter of trying to make them understand and see what exactly your vision is. And if they can truly understand the particular vision that you're actually putting across, and if he sees the beauty in it, then your client will be more than happy to actually bring that project to where you lead. So it's more about not telling the client, this is what I want. It's more about bringing the client into the picture, working with the client and having a good relationship to build a project. Because if you don't have the support of the client, I can guarantee you that the project will not come to fruition. It will be like, okay, I did it, but what about it? Because I did mention, when you do the project, it's always giving value to the client. So that value has to be, at the end of the day, be given to the client. So that is how it should work. So the relationship has to be really strong. Well, the challenges, the difficulties, the struggle, and at the end of the day, when you can convince all the team members, from the bricklayers to the plumbers to the electrician, that this is what you work for and this is what you get, and they see that, okay, this is the vision that this designer had, and they are happy to be part of it, and that's the best satisfaction you can get. Well, I mentioned it's actually solving problems. So for example, normally if you look into product design, whatever you use, it's to help you make your life a lot more easier, right? So when you design space, it's also trying to understand how the client that you're designing for is going to utilize the space. It's not just nooks and corners, but it's more about the spatial experience between the kind of segments, the kind of materials that they're going to use, the kind of coexistence between this element to the next element. So by the time when the client enters his home from the initial doorstep to, let's say, the final stage of his bedroom, he needs to feel at ease, at comfort. You know, it's like never going into a dark room, but it's always welcoming him with this kind of calmness. So design is all about solving problems, and it's actually a very important part of it. So if you can't solve a problem, that's not design, it's art. So, you know, it's just emotion based, where you just create something, but it has no function beyond just being beautiful. But design is beyond beautiful, it has to be very functionally strong and aesthetically beautiful. So the coexistence of this is the challenge for designers to really understand this craft. And if they can actually execute and understand this philosophy of how you can actually bring this together, then you become a really sensible designer. So normally you don't have the liberty to select projects. Clients come to you with the request of asking you to actually look into their project. So when you first look into the project, you need to truly understand what is the scope of the project, meaning to say that, do you have the opportunity to holistically work from the ground level up to the final finish? Or is it just a certain space that you are actually asked to design? For me, I think my philosophy is like, we don't do piecemeal. The reason is simple. So when you do a piecemeal kind of project where you just look into one particular room, the coexistence between that design that you have input and the existing design that is already there is never going to work. It's actually kind of always fighting for attention. So when that kind of project comes to me, I'll actually explain to the client that it's very difficult for me to actually work on that project because the coexistence between this element that I'm going to incorporate and the existing element that's already there, they will always have that kind of conflict. So if a project that comes from the beginning, where you can really see the scope of the whole planning and you can see that there's so much strong value in it, then I think that's the project that I look into rather than small project. The reason is, like I say, it's very difficult to impose your idea into an existing design which is not going to kind of supplement the concept behind what you're trying to work. See, when that happens, you have to totally revamp the whole, and when that happens, clients are most of the time not willing to do that. So it's pointless to just work on small niche projects. Yeah. Well, I say sensitivity to your craft, right? And solving whatever problem that's actually coming to you. Meaning to say, a designer role is to, at the end of the day, like I say, is to solve problems, because there's certain kind of problem and you need to solve it. And if you can solve it with the idea that you can give the client a good value in regards to the cost effectiveness, the aesthetics, the functionality, and when all these things come together, then you know that you're actually a good designer, because you are quite sensitive to all these different factors that makes a design good. Well, definitely, I can't say I like it, but I see promise in it. But the promise is such that it's not well articulated in the sense that it's, like I say, when you ask me the question, what is design? So when people look into the idea of making design, they're just designing it for the sake of designing it. It's not trying to really adding value or solving a problem. So when you take away the value part and solving problem part, you have a design that is actually lifeless, and you see this lifeless design everywhere. So that's why you tend to say that, okay, why can't I see something that is beautiful? The reason is simple. There's no value in that particular design, right? There's no sensibility to that particular design. And when you kind of divide that, then that's just the scenario that's happening right now in Nepal. But slowly, there are a few designers out there, they're trying, but I think they need a lot more exposure and understanding of the context. When I mention context is very important, because if you can't put the design into context, then definitely it's very difficult to achieve the success of that particular project. It's just kind of putting, like a rock in a glass, rather than putting a salt in a glass. When you put salt in a glass, it becomes salty, at least you can drink it. But when you put a rock in a glass, with water you can't actually taste anything, right? So I think the sensitivity has to be there. So it's coming out slowly at a very incremental space, very minimal incremental. But most of the time, right now clients are also quite, I can say, smart, because they look into a lot of Pinterest images and they hire designers, and designers are not able to kind of, like I say, dance with the client to educate them as to what good design is, but rather to fulfill the need of the client. So when that kind of project comes into place, then what you see is basically a client's project rather than an input between a designer and a client. So when that happens also, you have to understand that designers have a role to truly shape an environment, to shape a product, to shape a space. But if you have a client trying to influence you in every direction, then I think there is a problem about that particular design. I'm not trying to say that clients are not well versed. I know a few of my clients who are really well versed in what they want. They know the beauty of design, but they need a very good collaboration with a good designer to understand, okay, let's take to this level. So there are clients who are really appreciative of good designers and they know the value of design, but also there are clients who don't really understand the value of design, but they just try to push the designer, and the designer are not able to kind of work it out with the client and just fulfill their need. And when that happens, you don't get a good project out there. The most difficult thing is professionalism and ethics. Okay, this is what I faced. So working in Nepal is basically also the mindset. So when you are not professional, you don't have the mindset to actually do something that is engaging and interesting and innovative, and you are ethically not, doing something that needs to be done correctly, and you try to come into this scenario, and that's where you start to really pull you apart. So this is one aspect, because professionally is you don't have people being committed to a certain project. For them, it's all about completing one project and moving on to the next. It's all about gravitating towards money. But sometimes for us designers, money is important. Of course, definitely we need to survive. But beyond money, the reason we study design or we gravitate to design is we want to create something that brings about the kind of change, the need, to fulfill the need of the existing problem and how we can improve on it. And we need like-minded people to come together. So when you don't have this kind of people come together, then that's the challenges that I face, the very difficult challenge. But I also realized that once you actually get a good team coming together and you try to instill that kind of idea of professionalism, the ethics, the motivation of doing the particular project, then you start to realize that people are actually very keen and receptive to that idea of actually working on this kind of project. And like I mentioned before, if they can see a value of their input into the particular project, they will actually love working with you. So it takes time, but that level of frustration about professionalism, ethics, and that is something that really is challenging here in Nepal.
Being motivated, rooting for a change.
Yeah, definitely. But sometimes when you root for a change, the problem is that you can't just go for the sake of creating a change. Okay? You know what I'm trying to say? Like there are a lot of people who say, I need this to be changed, I need to change that. It's all coming out of your mouth, but it's not gravitating towards making it work. That's the problem. Okay? If you really want to gravitate towards a change, you need to start off from yourself first. Okay? If you don't believe that you can actually be the one to bring about the change, and the change doesn't have to be big change. Okay? For me, I start with a small change, meaning to say with my group of team. So if I can just instill the idea that we need to do something that brings about quality. We need to just work in maintaining this kind of level of specification, this kind of detailing, and if they can understand the change is already there, okay? The minimal change. And once they start to kind of get into that mentality of really trying to focus on all of these small things, that small things will create a ripple effect and definitely change will happen. So you don't look at the bigger change like tomorrow I want to change the country. It's not going to happen. Change myself, change the people around me, and have the ripple effect, the chaos theory.
Can we also talk about the disappointments which this profession brings about? You are really hopeful for a project and you're really excited for it, but suddenly the project gets shelved. This happens a lot, especially in Nepal, right? So, and that can change the life of a designer actually. It can depress you, literally. So, did you have any such experiences where such incidents happen?
Definitely, but I don't think it should depress a designer, really. I think for a designer, any sort of process that comes to you, you would have to accept. But like I say, that does not mean that you just take any sort of project, that comes to you. You got to be quite clear, because the kind of project that you want to undertake has to have an alignment with your kind of ideology and vision. But when the project gets shelved, for me, definitely there will be a certain sense of disappointment, but you shouldn't take the disappointment literally, because I think there are unforeseen circumstances that leads to that kind of project being shelved. We can't get a client and strangle him and say, why did you not let me complete the project? That can't be done. So I don't take it as a disappointment or depression, but it's more like encouragement, because there's always I think greater calling to say that if this project is shelved, there's another project waiting for you. Then put your focus and energy into that particular project. And if you have done the design and all that, don't worry about that, because that is a portfolio that is going to help you for the next particular project. Because when you create the schematics and ideas, you already have a vision and a portfolio built up for you, right? So that's actually a plus point. So although it's been shelved, that area can be used as an advantage and utilized for your other part of the project. So I'm not saying that you designer go into depression. No, I think. Like say, मेरो चाहिँ vernacular architecture हो, meaning to say एकदम नेपालको टेम्पल त टायर टेम्पल छ नि, that's something I'm always fascinated. म भिडियो गर्न चाहिँ माथि चढाउनु जस्तो feel हुन्छ, but that can be done. तर एउटा project that I really that was aligned with my kind of style भनेको एउटा चाहिँ I don't know where exactly एउटा चाहिँ it was done by Koreans के. So it was done by Koreans. I think I exactly do not know the project name, but they use just rocks and all that, and the form is very simple. It's one layer. Okay? I think it's a museum or something like that.
Radio station, Mustang.
Oh yeah, radio station Mustang, and that I like it because it's simple, it's effective, it's beautiful. It kind of coexists with the nature and all that. So that kind of project that I like. So yeah, either vernacular that deals with nature, the rawness, the beauty of it. So these two projects is something that really kind of inspires me.
Amazing project.
Yeah, amazing.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
It's abandoned right now.
Yeah, that's the sad part.
That's
okay?
a very sad part.
So that's like the philosophy of Nepalese designers, I think.
That's another issue. I kind of am feeling quite sad because by the time outside of Nepal, people value design, okay? And because they can see the value in it. For example, if you look into Apple products, and of course, technology because the value is there. But then beyond the technology part is the design part, whereby if you look into the kind of user experience of how you use that particular product, the form factor, the simplicity. And that's all it's needed. Okay? You do not need something that's so fancy and embellished and decorative because that's just adding trouble to your life. So I think we need to kind of minimize things to actually simplify life, not add things to clutter your life when you already have so many problems. You're trying to actually take it out. So, and Nepal, when you see beautiful vernacular architecture, like if you go to Bhaktapur, all this kind of building, it's sad to see that it's kind of changing shape and form. It should kind of be kind of preserved with the sensibility. Surki pani like huncha, but they need to understand which surki works, not just any type of surki and all that. If you have a surki that is so blatantly strong and it doesn't really coexist with the natural kind of texture of the brick, it's outlandish. Okay? So I think all of this simple detailing on it, if you can actually understand this, then I think Nepal design only they won't make this kind of mistakes. So like I say again, sensibility to what kind of design you're approaching, that makes a lot of difference. Definitely, government intervention definitely is needed because if a government that's running the country is not clear about the vision of where the country is heading towards to, it starts from there. Because if the government is very clear, they will actually spend a lot of money in the infrastructure whereby they are very conscious about this is how it should be done to facilitate the effectiveness and the ease of how people move around, first thing. Second, the client has to be a lot more aware of the value of design. So they can't just, do design in whim and just, just throw money unnecessarily. They have to understand who the designer that you want to work with can give you the kind of value. So the openness and the acceptance of the value of design, the client has to also understand. And also big companies, they also have to understand that design is going to be something that is definitely going to give them value. And if they can just support designers with this main intention, so if the government level can support designers, the client, the companies, definitely change will automatically come. So we need this kind of supportive environment. So it has to start from the top. I know sometimes people will say it has to start from the bottom, but if you put a big stone on this small person, that person is going to die. I know. It's just going to cause it. So you need a supportive platform. Okay? So if the government, all the entity comes and a lot of people support that big stone, then you have the higher chance of actually bringing in change and innovation. And these are, I think, 3 areas that needs to look into that can really shape the change. And only such things, I'm actually a one-man show support because I'm actually quite particular about the project that I handle. Okay? And the reason being also, it's very difficult to get someone with the right mindset to approach the project together with you. It needs a lot of training. And when you train someone, it takes a lengthy process time. Okay? It's not something that we bring a person during internship and he can understand your own whole vision and philosophy. I don't think that works that way. It at least takes a lot of time. So for now, I also don't take big projects because I am not able to handle big projects. And I'm also not a fan of really big projects because when something is humongous, it's very difficult to kind of look into details and articulate the particular formula. So I'm more of a very small scale projects that I can really get into, feel it, touch it, and invest my time on the project holistically. And so that is one reason I don't really have interns coming in. Hopefully, if I do scale it up, I would definitely love working with interns with the right mindset, the right philosophical thought, that they really want to bring about a change within themselves and also appreciate the project that has been out there while working together with them.
वास्तुमा चाहिँ तपाईले के कतिको फलो गर्नुहुन्छ त प्रोजेक्ट्सहरुमा?
Okay, for Vastu, actually it really depends. For example, there are some clients who very much is focused on Vastu because they believe that the kind of right positioning of all the elements that is dictated by Vastu will bring in the necessary benefits. But then again, some projects, design is a very complicated stuff. The reason is you can't justify the layout if you want the aesthetic sensibility part to come into the picture. Meaning to say that sometimes when you have a certain kind of spatial arrangement and certain form that you need to play and it kind of deviates from the Vastu part, then the question is there. So should we go towards Vastu or should we not go with Vastu? And if the client feels that, okay, I'm 50-50 on this, I need certain prime areas like the kitchen to be there, the prayer room to be there, then if you fulfill that area, then I accommodate based on 50-50 or 60-40 principle or 70-30. But if it's very much fully dictated by Vastu, then it really hampers the kind of ideology of what the design would shape out to be. Because again, I say it's dictated by Vastu. It has already given you the kind of layout, the direction, the room layout. So the design is dictated by that. But if you can say that, okay, I'm going to put like again 60-40, then I think your design part can kind of have a relationship with the idea of okay, let's have certain important rooms be taken by the Vastu, for example, the kitchen, the prayer room, the head of the family room, the toilets. Then it will work out to some extent. And also, I think certain Vastu part definitely is scientifically based one, there is so this one we can't totally neglect it. Like I say, again, some clients, they don't really care about Vastu, so you have the freedom to really explore. But if it's dictated by Vastu, then I think it's good to just talk with the client to truly understand, okay, how much emphasis do you want to put the Vastu aspect. If we want to get a form, you have to understand that it will kind of confront it, not nicely, but if you can just say, okay, these are certain areas, then we can actually complement it. Yeah. It depends.
So, तपाईं चाइना र सिंगापुरमा पढ्नु भएकोले चाहिँ like do you believe in Vastu? Like some of my seniors that studied abroad, like they don't even care about Feng Shui, Vastu, anything. But like you are into it.
No, I'm not into it. It's like I say, every design project has their own requirement, right? If let's say if a client comes to you and say, I want to be dictated by Vastu, and it's a very interesting project, you can't say no, I'm not going to take Vastu because I'm not into Vastu. I don't think that works that way. But if you feel that no, I don't want to do any Vastu project, then by all means it's a loss.
Yeah, I didn't mean like not doing the project, like predominantly like dictated by Vastu, or like do you like think like no, this should face like this should face east or north, and then this should be at northeast. Like, do you freely design like that, or?
No, actually, like I say, it first depends on the client, because the project has to come to you in order to have that kind of mindset to say that, okay, Vastu dictated or not Vastu dictated, right? If the client says Vastu dictated, then of course it doesn't just be planned by the Vastu implication of it. You have to start off with a site analysis, because you have to understand the site context, the analysis of the location in relation to the building in relation to the other building, so and so forth. So how can these two merge and come together? Then I think at the end of the part of it, we need to also look into the comfort part contextually. If it's actually a temperate climate, so and so forth, then I think the south-facing part is going to be very important. And if let's say Vastu is very against that part, then I think you have to then again decide optimally, right? That you need the comfort of the warmth, and Vastu is saying no, you do not need the comfort of the warmth. And I think the sensibility of how do you look into it has to be very much analyzed and thought about. So, like you said, in Singapore, there's actually a multiracial society, meaning to say that there's Indians, Muslim, Chinese, then of course Eurasians, that is called expat. So the Chinese definitely believe in feng shui. In China also is feng shui. So feng shui and Vastu is the same thing. So for me, since I was actually brought up there, and feng shui is also something that I've also kind of understood and learned, but of course not as a specialist. So if the client dictates that they need the part of the feng shui or Vastu to be there, then you need to be able to accommodate it. And based on that, if the project kind of really accept the fact, then I think it works. If it doesn't accept the fact, again I say, then you have to question, okay, how important is the form against Vastu aspect of it? So the challenge is there.
But are you open to the interactive sessions like this with the students, with the young architects, with old architects, whoever?
Yeah, definitely. I would be more than willing, because I don't really open up too much, but then I think within a kind of proper setting, I don't mind this kind of interaction, because I believe that this interaction is very much needed too. And it's needed in the sense that, there are so much things that can be discussed, that can be tabled, that can be questioned, that can be analyzed. And if everyone kind of believes that, okay, this is the direction we should work towards, and put away the selfishness nature of saying that, okay, I designed this and this is my project, but say that, okay, I designed this project, and if you start to look into the project, this is how it was done, and this was the sensitivity towards how it worked out. And if you can just articulate all these nuances, and they are interested in it, I think it really inspires them, because you really give them the nitty-gritty of all this detailing. Because even for me, still now, when I look into projects, for me, I look at the overall project, then I zoom into all the kind of details that makes that project beautiful. Because I think the sensitivity of how a particular designers look into this particular form, or particular material, particular detail, is the one that makes the big project beautiful. Okay, it's not the big project that makes the small projects small little beautiful. It's the small details that, when you put it together, makes the whole project beautiful. So definitely interaction like that will be definitely helpful. Yeah. When you want to improve your learning and become a better person, they always say, I've heard someone, you need to teach you need to teach, okay? And when you teach people, you actually bring in something that they've learned and sharing out, and it makes it even more enlightening to yourself and to whoever is actually learning. And teaching is one of the most difficult jobs. The reason is, if you can't simplify explaining, they're never going to understand the concept behind it. Okay, so the problem here, I'll give you an example. When I was learning in Singapore again, it was a project, designing a chair. So it was something like that. I'm not really sure. So it's like, design a chair that is not a chair. At the end of the day, it is a chair. Like design a chair that is not a chair. At the end of the day, it's a chair. That's the kind of statement that's given to you, and okay, do the project. So we all scrambled and all that. So you got to thinking like, design a chair that is not a chair. At the end of the day, it's a chair. So what was the kind of critical thinking needed for that particular project? So the idea was this. So the lecturer was telling us, just don't look at the function part of it. You need to also think about the form one. Okay, that's where. So it has to be a chair. At the end of the day, it looks like a chair. You need to see it. That's the function part. But don't make it look like a chair. It's the aesthetic part and the form part. So it has to be beautiful, okay? And your part, that's what we are taught to think in a different light. So direct design a chair, but you will just literally go and design a chair. So the question is, design a chair, that is not a chair. At the end of the day, it's still a chair. So the function has to be always there. But whether it looks like a chair, it doesn't look like a chair, it's your own interpretation of how it is. So this is how the thought process ruined. So I learned down, and it was a beautiful learning experience. Thank you for inviting me, and I really truly enjoyed this session, and I think it was really, and hopefully whatever I said really does bring a little bit of the change and thoughtfulness and critical thinking, so that whoever wants to become a designer, I think I'm not to say that I've done a lot of projects. Not that I've done a lot of projects, but the project that I've done is something that I strongly feel that I really associate and really find the beauty in it, and hopefully my clients also find that particular beauty and the value in it. So and hopefully this interaction session will kind of inspire the upcoming designers with the same kind of thought and mentality. Yeah.